Добрый день, дорогие товарищи, приветствую всех вас на всех наших группах, континентах, где вы собрались сегодня и в этот особый день. Сегодня у нас существует не только наша беседа часовая, но и другие ваши встречи со всеми нашими товарищами во всем мире. Тем более в преддверии большого международного конгресса, который у нас ровно через месяц состоится.
Global Congress that's coming up 1 month from now.
Все находимся в подготовке к нему. И
So
те темы, которые будут в трагическом конгрессе, мы изучаем сегодня практически каждый день на наших утренних уроках. Я надеюсь,
studying them, and we are studying them at the morning lessons. And I hope that you are hearing some parts of those, and that you're with us at the lessons. We're going to continue the topic we discussed last week, which is perception of reality.
Самая болезненная, самая большая, я думаю, что она даже самая интересная, потому что она на сегодняшний день и среди ученых, и вообще встречает очень много.
Today, among the scientists as well, it is very lively. The discussion is very lively, and people are very quick to respond, because we live in a world, despite the fact that we live in a world of sensations for us, we can't imagine how strange it is at the same time, and how imaginary. Because Einstein, he did something to describe this picture of reality that we see. He said that everything depends on the observer. Everything happens according to the observer, and the relative speed between the object that perceives the observer and the object that is perceived, everything changes. And we go even further. We say that not only time changes, or speed, or magnitude, length of something, of measured objects, but absolutely all of our observations, they are all imaginary in a way. And everything that we see, it has really no actual basis. It's all contained within borders of our perception. If we didn't have those borders, then we wouldn't be able to perceive any picture of our reality or any other reality, because it is specifically this, by having these five senses, sight, smell, touch, taste, and so on, these five senses, they essentially give us the picture in which we feel, sense ourselves, and we follow these five senses, and to construct them, and to base all of our sciences on them. So all of our sciences are essentially a consequence of these five senses with which we exist. Or if we expand them with the help of certain objects, instruments, microscopes, telescopes, and so on. But essentially, all of these senses all of these instruments are based on our five senses, and our brain, which has constructed them, and our brain simply services them, the senses. So today we really can't even imagine what truly exists outside of us. So the Kabbalah begins with the book of Zohar, describing to us. By the way, we've had a very interesting read a very interesting chapter in the book of Zohar, the so-called New Zohar, which is the addition to the beginning of the Bible. In the book of Zohar, where he writes to us, can you imagine over 2,000 years ago? It's described in there that the earth is round, that it rotates around the sun, that for one hemisphere, the people that live in that hemisphere, it's night, and the other hemisphere, for the people, it's day, and how this day turns into night. And Sasha, do you have it here? No, unfortunately. But you can still, I think we have links to it on our websites. It's very interesting how the Zohar, which was concealed for thousands of years, and people weren't able to use it, so this is why they didn't know, and nobody knew about this other than the Kabbalists. But this was written so many years ago, and with such tremendous simplicity, and where it simply explains what exists out there. But next to this, there are many other details of our existence. So, Kabbalah also explains very simply our perception of reality. It tells us that reality does not exist. The only thing that exists is one single force which exists outside of us. This force builds us, constructs us and our senses, and it also imprints its own image within us, which we see, a sense, as our world. So everything that we see is a projection of this one single force through our filters, through our senses. In other words, we can maybe liken this to, suppose, our head, and inside the head we have sight, sound. I apologize for my drawing of the image of man, but then we have taste and touch and sound and so on. So we have 5 senses which receive information, and these 5 senses, they work. Here we also have hands. We'll draw it right here. Tactile sensation. It's not just the hands, it's the entire surface of our bodies. So here we have the 5 senses, and these 5 senses, through certain zones in the brain, they essentially receive all these signals, and these signals pass through these zones in the brain, and then they're broadcast at the screen at the back of the head. We have a projection type equipment where a movie is essentially shown to us. Meaning, at the screen, at the back of the head, a picture is shown of something that supposedly is happening outside. So it seems to us that whatever is happening, it's happening outside. In reality, there's nothing happening outside. Outside, there is only the light. Simple light. One single and absolutely universal and force that our senses perceive it as the world that is projected, that is perceived within. But it seems, because it's all projected and processed, concocted by our brain within, it seems to us that it's happening outside. And it's a very clear perception. It's very believable that these levels of nature, still vegetative, animate, and human, exist outside, and they're all connected to each other, and all kinds of relationships and all kinds of things happen, and life and death. When in reality, this entire picture is only within us. And the Zohar writes this very simply, tremendously simply, but still today we're having trouble understanding this, even though we're getting closer to it today. there is the approach of ancient scientists where they feel that everything that we perceive and feel is true, it exists in reality. And then there are actually 4 approaches in all, and the Kabbalistic approach is the last one, the 4th one. And all these approaches to perception of reality, they're all headed by these major pillars of science, Einstein, Everett. And what they say is that it depends on the observer, all the processes that are being... Well, Newton first began. His approach was that, his theory was that everything that we perceive, that's what actually exists, that time is a true parameter of our existence. Then Einstein came along and he shook this theory to its foundation. He proven that time is relative, that it depends on the speed of an object, and his work really based and went into it further. And the next theory that came along was about 35 years after Einstein, where the claim that was made that there is no relativity of perception as Einstein had claimed, where everything depends on the observer, meaning the observer moves relative to the object that he observes and something changes, and this is why the object feels the changes. No. Everett went even further. He said that observation as a whole, it is something in between the observer and the observed object, meaning the observer changes, and when the observer changes, the observed object changes as well. So we have something in the middle between them. Lately, people have been saying that if we observe a part of the universe, we already include our own changes in it. And if we observe it, then by observing it, we change within as well. So it follows that simple contact with any part of nature leads to both the observer and the observed object changing together, and what you get is some kind of a mix between them, some kind of the end result. And the state that combines the states of the observed object and the observer, and they together become one whole. And this is what the observer actually discovers. So if a scientist is observing a certain natural phenomenon, he doesn't observe it outside of something. He observes it within, and then he relays how he perceives this phenomenon and how he had changed, and at the end how he perceives the phenomenon after this change. So you have these two states, two entities that somehow come together in a third, final, consequential construction. So the science of Kabbalah goes even further. It says that no, it's not that we include our own faults into the universe, even if we see it from afar. Of course, it's true, but we go even further, because there is no such thing as anything existing outside of us, whether it's objects or the universe as a whole. None of this exists. Everything exists only in our imagination. And our imagination is based only on our inner desires. If we can change these desires, if we can control it, then we will truly discover the magnitude of our dependence on it. And the desire essentially determines what we perceive and what we sense, because there is no specific object or image outside of us. So by changing our desires, our parameters within, our qualities, we can change the worlds that we perceive within, and we can perceive perceive something very different, radically different than the picture of the world that we currently perceive. Just lately we've had a lot of these sci-fi movies where it's truly suddenly everything changes outside of us, and all these pictures they undergo this radical change. Well, Kabbalah has been speaking about this for a long time, for many years, and it's explains it very seriously as well. At the same time, it's bringing forth a very simple example. It's telling us that outside of us only the simple light exists. It has no form. Its only quality is the quality of absolute bestowal. We are created in a quality of reception. As the science of Kabbalah explains, we are created opposite of the light. And this quality of reception, that's opposite to the quality of bestowal. And we perceive this light, the contrast, draws for us a picture that is essentially the image of our oppositeness to the light. So this oppositeness to the light, this incompatibility, this lack of similarity between our qualities and the light's qualities, this is the picture of our world. So the world is a very relative image of certain qualities over other qualities. It's a projection of the light's qualities over the projection of our personal qualities that are opposite to the light. And if we change our qualities to be more similar to the light, then we will, as if illuminate our world, we will draw it closer and closer to the qualities of the light, to the extent that we will stop sensing it as something dark and contradictory and consisting of the still vegetative and animate levels of nature that moves and is born and then dies, and all things happen in between. All of this will disappear. From the restricted, within the bounds of our perception, we will begin to perceive the light the way that it exists. And we're going to, how is this possible? Well, what does it mean to perceive the light in these new forms? We can't understand it quite as of yet, but the Zohar does explain it to us. By reading these descriptions in the Zohar, even though we don't feel them, we don't sense them, we don't really understand them, what the Zohar does is explain to us the states of our world. It describes these states, what we perceive today in this world, the nature and levels of nature and all the phenomena that we see. And then what the Zohar does is it gradually leads us step by step into the sensations that we need to undergo if we are to change our egoistic qualities of reception to be more like the bestowing qualities according to the biblical principle, love thy neighbor as thyself. And if we come out of ourselves in this way, to come out of this egoistic quality and to ascend over it, then we will discover truly a different world, a world of light. And what's interesting here is that the Rambam, the great Kabbalist, back in the 11th century of our era, he wrote that the entire nature of our world, it actually exists below the speed of light, of real light, of our corporal light. But the higher nature, which is not constricted in material objects, it exists above the speed of light. So this is where we need to aspire to. And this is what Baal Salam writes in his article, The Introduction to the Book of Zohar. The same principle also applies to our attainment of the corporal world, just as in the spiritual world. For instance, our sight, which which we see a huge world outside. This is written 2,000 years ago. Our sight, with which we see the huge world outside, in all of its wondrous fulfillment. But in reality, we don't see any of it. These images appear within us. In other words, in the back of our brains, there is a eye-like device, like a photo camera, which draws for us everything that we see, and everything that we seems to exist outside of us. And the Creator had made this. Everything that we feel here at the back of the head, right here, the back side of our brain, there is a mirror-like, he says here, a glass eye, but it's like a mirror image. It's like an optical lens which inverses the image, and everything that is projected at the back of my head here, it looks as though it exists outside of me, before me. And even though we see all of this outside of us, and everything that we see outside of us is not a true, we understand that it's all illusion, and it actually exists within. We must still be grateful to the Creator's governance, the light that gives all of this to us, because He had constructed this mirror within our brains, which allows us to perceive and attain something as though it exists outside. We're going to understand why in a second. In this, meaning in this illusion that something is seemingly, allegedly happening outside of us, although it's actually drawn in us, within, the Creator had given us an image, the opportunity to measure everything, all objects, within as well as outside. And without this opportunity, most of our knowledge would have disappeared, because ultimately they are based on measuring something outside of us. You know, if we didn't have this opportunity, what would we have left? Simple psychology, that's it. We wouldn't have any of our life or corporal sciences. What could we have seen or measured? If the picture of the world that I perceive right now, I can investigate it. I can observe it as something seemingly objective, allegedly existing outside of me. But when, on top of that, I build my measurements, my sciences, what do? In this way, I attain the inner mechanism that is also created within. Gradually, and I don't even know how, I don't know what it's all going to lead me to, but essentially the next phase, after Newton and Einstein and Everett, as Kabbalah says, in Kabbalah is written how people will come to this, they will come to see that this false perception of reality that the light had created in us, it exists so that we could transition from the images of our world to the world of the light. The light itself, the true light. And this is how we will pass into the spiritual world. This is ahead of us. And this attainment is based on the qualities of bestowal, which Kabbalah essentially gives us the opportunity to attain. And then we are freed from this outside illusion which exists here, and it is drawn for us here. And then we clearly understand that all this is an illusion that exists in us, but we no longer perceive it as existing in our brain, as existing right here in the back of our brain, but we begin to perceive it as though it exists in our soul. So instead of this entire world, this big illusion, we will see a completely different picture, where our soul, the Kli, it will be fulfilled with the light, and this measure of the light that is similar to it, that's the measure that we're going to feel within. And this picture will be revealed in us more and more. we have the light, the so-called Or Makif, the surrounding light, and this is our soul, the desire, and it will be filled with this light. And essentially there is nothing else. All within the soul, it's also broken down into still vegetative, animate, and human levels. There are 125 degrees within the soul, 613 desires, and so on. There is a tremendous amount of in the parts that it breaks down to. So, and when the light enters the soul, all these various relationships at the various degrees, they create in us the sensation of a higher life. So this is the reality that is there for us to come to. So when the Zohar talks about all this reality exists within souls, the ascension and the descent, and they are the inner sensations. However, it seems as though it's happening within the giver. And here we have a very interesting very side note. When we feel these sensations within, gradually they contract. We also feel as though they exist in the light that surrounds us. And this is true up until the very last degree of correction of this desire, when we attain complete equivalence with the light. That is when we exist in one state, when the entire desire is fully filled with the light. The light is equal to the desire, and this state is called the end of correction of this desire. At first it was egoistic, then it began to correct itself along the 125 degrees until it has become altruistic, and then fully equivalent with the light, when the light had become equal to the desire. And this state is called the end of correction. But here, this general soul that includes all of our souls, that is also called Adam, here it merely finishes its correction, meaning its preparation to some other type of work. But what happens beyond this barrier, the Zohar or no other source of Kabbalah talks about this whatsoever, because as we have studied about our perception, our language, our consciousness, it exists on a very slow level. Let's use a different color for this. If we draw here the world of infinity, then the world of Adam Kadmon, Atzilut, Beriya, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, and this world, you and I can only perceive reality from the so-called Binah of the world of Atzilut, meaning everything that exists here above Binah of the world of Atzilut, we do not perceive, we don't know what this is. Only what's below the Binah of the world of Atzilut do our words and sounds and attainments of any kind. Only from this level we begin to wake up from this unconscious state. Here, we don't have images here above, meaning no images, meaning absolutely no reaction from the side of matter to what's happening to it. And only from the middle of Binah of the world of Atzilut, and so on. Here we have letters and reactions and words and sounds, and of our perception and so on. Therefore, the Zohar and all Kabbalistic books, even though they describe our movement from below up to the world of infinity, but this movement from our world to the world of infinity, in reality, it it is only up to this here level of Bina, and we don't know what's happening after this, up to this state right here. And then there's still the same question exists here. We don't know. We don't know what lies for us after that. But it's when we're talking about the end of correction, of course, we're talking about achieving this final degree of the world of infinity. What's happening beyond it, what exists beyond it, we don't know. It's the next phase of our development, and for that reason, Kabbalah doesn't speak about it. Kabbalists don't explain to us why they can't explain or talk about it, because they have no opportunity to describe anything that goes on there in images or in sounds or in anything that we can perceive. This is the part. Okay, so here the Zohar writes further, despite the fact that we see everything from our soul, not from our body, not from our world, as we have spoken here, as physicists base their research on. But here, when we've reached the state when the light has fulfilled this completely, he writes to us here, despite the fact that we feel as though things are happening outside of us, anyone with a clear brain understands that everything happens within, in our brain. So the same is true with the souls. When, despite the fact that they exist in the light, which allegedly exists right here outside, they are absolutely certain that everything exists within them, and not in the giver. This is what the Book of Zohar says, that it is impossible to convey with human words of something that is outside the bounds of our corporal perception, our habits, our common sense. So if it weren't for the sciences of today, which are now speaking of these paradoxical phenomena, which before they not only did they would have burnt it, but I don't know what they might have done with it, about the elemental particles that can exist in different places at once, and it can be all when these particles they transform into something else, some kind of waves or frequencies. Altogether, we're coming to understand that everything that we feel and perceive, it's all an illusion, and it is all evoked by some kind of force, which we call the upper light. This is what the Kabbalists have called this force, because in analogy with our world, the light is the basis of all life, and for this reason, they have named this force the upper light in the spiritual world. Maybe we can take some questions. We have a lot of questions from all the continents. So, for instance, Carmen from Tenerife, Spain, is asking, you say that we perceive an illusory reality. Can we affect this illusion with our desires? And what in reality is, what truly is this reality? Naturally, my dear, of course we can do it. Here, we exist in a state called our world. It's this narrow space. I'm using obviously as hyperbole, but this is where we exist. And then we have the spiritual worlds of Asiya, Yetzirah, Bria, Atzilut. I'm gonna draw it a little bigger because it's really the major world that affects us. Then Adam Kadmon and the world of infinity. World of infinity. So we have a multitude of levels of worlds, levels of perception of reality. This is our world. I apologize for not writing in Spanish, but I'm sure you're going to get it translated. Our world, then the world of Asiya, Yetzirah, Bria, Atzilut, Adam Kadmon, because it is the image. It's the image is taken from man, Adam, and this is the world of infinity. World of infinity. So, what is the difference between all these worlds? When I ascend from my corporal illusions and enter the perception within my desire, not these illusions. That's what it means that I come outside of this restriction and enter the world of Asiya. And here I begin to perceive everything within my soul. I realize that all of my past perceptions, they were illusory. This is why our world is called the imaginary world or the sleeping world. And this is how we begin to perceive this world as soon as we ascend to this next level of perception. And here, let's say I correct 20% of my perception, only 20%. And the next 20% I perceive the world of Atzara. And the next level, that's 60%, the world of Briya. So every time I increase the preciseness of my perception, 80% in the world of Atzilut and 100% in the world of Adam Kadmon, and then I come into the world of infinity, into infinite perception in a completely corrected system. So here we have the light in its completely open, revealed state. And these worlds, these levels, they are filters that separate the upper light from me, from myself. The light filters itself as it comes from the world of infinity down to me. It filters it so much that when it gets down to this world, where I perceive it now, I perceive nothing. I perceive 0%. And when I ascend above, here I have 100% of the light. So our entire movement from above downward and from below upward, it is merely our similarity or lack of similarity to the light. So when our soul descends from the world of infinity down to our world, this is essentially as it moves down, these levels are the percentages to which it becomes less similar to the light. From 100% down to 80, 60, 40, 20%, and down to our world, 0%. So everything is measured by either our egoistic desire or our altruistic desire, and its similarity with the light. So by mastering, controlling, rising above my desire, by making it similar to the light, in so doing, I ascend this ladder, which is why the entire science of Kabbalah is dedicated to perceiving how to become filled with this light. Because to the degree that it fills me, I ascend. To the degree that it does not fill me, I remain opposite to it. And it follows the major law of our world, the law of equivalence of form, which is how our entire world works, how objects, people, elements, how they come together if they're similar or become distant if they're not. And here we'll have the same thing. We have the light and the desire, which are opposite in their initial state, and in their final state they must become to complete equivalence. So they must become one. So here we exist within our desire, And for this reason, our entire work is that we need to control our desire in a way that it will become more and more similar to the Creator, to the light. This is what the science of Kabbalah talks about, how we can become similar to the light quicker and more effectively, and so that we could attain this infinite level. And this is where we begin to even perceive our existence outside of our body. Even here, at the very first level, we begin to, in the world of Asiyah, we begin to perceive that our state, which we had in this world, in this body, it is not our state. Our body has absolutely nothing to do with it. In other words, in reality, I is what exists in the desire. And if I come to a level here, the world of Atzilut, for instance, that if I fill my desire in this place right here, then my body doesn't need to it doesn't matter how long my body lives in this world, because I identify myself as though I exist in this level, the world of Atzilut, not on the level of our world. So the body may die, it finished its mortal path, and the soul remains. And I am absolutely unconcerned with the body. I don't feel it as anything important, just as with our bodies we can cut off our fingernails, our hair, and we don't regret it because we don't feel it as pain, because with respect to the animal level of the body, cutting off the vegetative level of nails and hair, we don't perceive it as painful, and we don't regret any of it. In the same principle, when we identify with the human level, we're going to feel the same way about the death of the animal body. This is how we're going to perceive, this is what we're striving towards. So that, and when we're there, we're not going to really pay much attention to these metamorphoses that happen within the body, but we're going to need to come back, reincarnate in the body once again until we attain this highest level, the world of infinity. Because we must go through all of these ascensions, we must come to the very end while still existing in the body. Why? Because when we're in the body, this gives us the opportunity to ascend independently, step after step. Because every step that we ascend, let's say here I ascended to a certain degree, say I exist in this degree right here. In order to ascend higher, I can't ascend right away. I first need to fall down into this world and then ascend over. Then again I need to fall down to this world and ascend over even greater and even higher again. And this process repeats itself. I fall, I descend, and I ascend. For this reason, our world is incredibly important, even though it is the worst world, the lowest world. It can't even be likened to any spiritual construction or level, with nothing. This is a truly terrible state. But in order to be independent in my spiritual ascent, I need to fall into it, because it has absolutely no connection to the spiritual, and from it ascend to the next spiritual degree. So this is why it's actually so necessary for the biggest, the greatest spiritual ascent here, the one that's until here is the final degree and the last degree before. So from this degree I need to fall down all the way down to our world, and only from after this can I ascend to the world of infinity, the final degree. Do you see? This is why up until the very end of our correction, our world is very valuable for this reason. So if we don't complete our correction in this life, we must return again and continue this circle of life until we complete our correction. We have readers from viewers from Vilnius are asking. They have a whole group of people watching Dilhelsen together. Lina is asking, how can we, if everything is predetermined, how can we affect the world with our desires? Then what is the role of man, essentially, in this reality? Our movement from the level of our world up to the level of infinity, it is predetermined in the sense that it must happen within the timeline of 6,000 years. We must complete this path within 6,000 years, across 5 worlds to reach the world of infinity. And this is undoubtedly, this is the point 0, and this is 125 degrees. However, 6,000 years is the maximum period. We today, I don't know how to draw it here. Actually, I'm just not going to do it. Okay, let's do it. Today we are at 5,771st year. That's today, right now. And we begin the count from the first soul, Adam, who 5,771 years ago, he was the first to reveal the system and the first to reach the level of infinity. So from the first man, which is why he's called Adam, the first man who has attained this level, up until the last person here. Here we have all of our dear and valuable 7 billion people. So all of them will have to attain the same state within 6,000 years. So what's the problem here? The problem is, what path are we going to take to get there? So who was it, Lina, that asked this question? Linus from Vilnius, okay. We must achieve this, and we will, but there are 2 paths to get there. There is the path of suffering and the path of light. Either we cause suffering for the light within ourselves, which draw us forward, and they are positive sufferings because they draw me. This is me right here. Or I am pressured by all kinds of suffering from the world outside of me, ecological, political, wars, everything you can imagine, all kinds of destruction, which still push me from behind. So, and these are negative. So the science of Kabbalah is given to me so that we could make use of this positive force to develop it and to follow this path in a positive, pleasant way. And if we don't do it, then you can read in the prophets what they read about the final days of this world and how terrible things will be. At the end of days that they speak about, that's the final 200 years. And truly, what they write is very, very frightening. The science of Kabbalah gives us the opportunity to very quickly and effectively, without avoiding all the crises and hunger and tsunamis and volcanoes and all of these other problems, to ascend to this next degree very quickly and in a pleasant way. And in this way we also achieve complete fulfillment and harmony, and we will certainly achieve it. There is no question about that. It's so predetermined in nature. These are the laws of nature that we cannot escape from. But we can't simply hope for something positive. The law of nature is that if you fall from the 10th story building, It doesn't matter if you're a good person or a bad person, the end is going to be the same. So the same is true for us here. And the Kabbalists, they warn us, they tell us that beginning from the end of the 20th century, we enter into a state where the forces of nature are gathering around us, and unless we independently aspire toward these changes, toward for the above, for the spiritual degrees, in so doing we save ourselves from this force that is gathering behind us. We can't even imagine how terrible this pressure that they can put on us is. How the states can be worse than death. More questions from Sasha from Stenopol. We perceive reality with the 5 senses, and this world we perceive as the mirror image of the light. So where is this evil? Where does it exist? It exists within man, of course. This is what he wanted to know. Evil exists only within us. Evil also is not what we consider evil today. When we have developed for thousands of years from the world of infinity, our universe was formed, and then our galaxy, and then the planet Earth, and then we began to develop on planet Earth. None of this is ego. And when we begin to develop, evolve on this planet Earth, that's not ego either. And here today, in 21st century, when the point in the heart began to develop, that's not ego either. And here, with this point in the heart, we begin to ascend. We begin to study Kabbalah. We have Kabbalah here, the group, the teacher. We have all these things here. And now that we are trying to actualize this point in the heart within, to actualize it within, here hatred emerges. Repulsion. Repulsion from what? From unification. This is the ego. This is the evil which Kabbalah speaks of, and not what we think about the evil that exists in the people that are walking around on the street. This is the way how they were born. But here, as we begin to work in the group, to work with the friends in order to rise above ourselves, here is when the sensation of evil emerges, the extent to which we don't want this. This is the evil that we're talking about. And in order to, therefore, to achieve the level where we can perceive evil, we really need to work with the Kabbalistic method. Because here you don't only we're not talking about the evil that exists in you, in your animal you, from when you were born, but here we reveal the evil of repulsion of this one state where all the souls are connected. You're trying to establish the right, proper connection of bestowal between you. As you try to do it, as you try to be connected to others, as in a single organism, everything is connected, interconnected. Try to do it. And as you try, you come to a state when you realize that you don't want this, you don't desire this, you hate, you loathe this state. So it is this revelation of hatred, of repulsion, which it reveals for you your true state with respect to unification, with respect to the correction of the souls. This is what we call evil. And a regular person doesn't feel this. He thinks that there's nothing, it's no big deal. Therefore, in order to reveal the evil, you need to exert many, many efforts before this happens. But in this state, you reveal this breaking, shattering of the soul that has existed at the very beginning of creation. You know, the very first story of creation in the Bible. It is this evil that you then reveal. So here we have the ego, the evil, and then you continue to aspire with Kabbalah, the group, the teacher, And you begin to unify all of this together within and then eventually you come to the end of correction, the world of infinity, from which you at first came. And along the way, you achieve this recognition of evil. And this is why our groups, when they form around the world, what happens soon after they form, they start revealing these bad states that they're not feeling. They start fighting together. They start fighting for power, and all kinds of little things start getting in the way. It seems to them that they begin that they're back in the kindergarten or in the street somewhere. They're bickering and all. This is because this primordial ego is being revealed within them, and this is the spiritual ego, and not our corporal ego, a material ego in this world. When they don't care about the corporal ego anymore, what they care about is the fact that they can't seem to unify together on top of it. This is the state of the Mount Sinai that they're revealing between themselves. Sinai, from the Hebrew word hatred. So it is when people reveal this mountain of hatred that is standing between them like a true mountain, and when they overcome it, that's when they attain the revelation of the Creator. So we have a lot of work to do to become real egoists, so then we could use it to reveal the Creator. Why? Because we need this ego in order to correct ourselves. Natasha from Vladivostok asks, with my intuition, I feel that what you say is the truth, but my brain resists. What do I do with my doubts? Continue to study and you will prove to yourself. You don't need to believe anything I say. Kabbalah, by the way, is very much against all kinds of subjugations toward the teacher, to accept the teacher as something higher than you. You think that give him spiritual qualities and so on. You shouldn't do that. You can see the way that I behave toward you. And I do it very deliberately. Give you an image of me as somebody perhaps not very high. I do it intentionally to help you. And you should in no way depend on me and think that, oh, I'm just going to trust in the teacher. He knows everything, but I'm not going to do anything. Of course not. Then you would not be successful. You need to build within you that space in which the light will then fill. And it needs to be, you need to become a very independent collection, gathering of souls. So you shouldn't believe me, but you need to check, you need to verify, not just abandon it. Another question from Lithuania. Thomas is asking, why is it so difficult to enter this new reality of which you speak, the spiritual world? The first step is very difficult, yes. I am telling you from my own experience that it is very difficult, because in this you cardinally change your qualities. You inverse them completely from absorbing, from receiving towards bestowing. And this change within you, it is very tragic in a way. It involves lots of psychological, almost like trauma. It's almost as if you're giving birth. It is truly difficult, I know. We hope that at the Congress that's coming up a month from now, we're going to try for most of our students to make this transition. But the most important thing, don't worry, it's going to come. It'll happen. I'm telling you again from experience. We have no choice. We have no other path. Keep trying, keep verifying what Kabbalah says, but be serious about it. And these verifications are going to provide for you these internal conditions that are necessary for the light to be revealed in you. On this, I will bid farewell. And we will see each other again next Sunday. And until we meet each other at the Congress, if not in person, then virtually. Stay connected to us through our virtual channels. Be well, goodbye, and good luck.